It's the MyMichelleLive podcast.
MyMichelleLive Health Watch. She's writing a prescription for hope. Here's Michelle.
Hey, thank you so much, big voice guy. He's such an important part of the program, even though he's just this ethereal voice, that's just there. It's all right. We love him anyway. It is Health Watch Wednesday. We're giving you some information on what's going on in the world. We have been really focusing on Corona and the vaccine because it's not going away. There's more questions than there are answers. But what we really wanted to get to today is this fear factor. And there is a fear factor on the side of worrying about COVID, that we are living in fear. We don't always know all of the facts. We give into propaganda, and oftentimes the news stories, we feed into them. It's like an addiction, and we keep listening and listening and listening, and we live in fear where maybe we shouldn't. And sometimes we put our focus in the wrong places. On the other side, there is a growing number of people and people of faith that are afraid of the vaccine and anything coming out of the government. Some is just unreasonable fear. Some is wanting to ask questions, afraid we're not getting answers, but not knowing what to do. So we're going to try to find some balance, because on My Michelle Live, we look for the God story. And that is exactly what we're doing today. You've heard some of the news. You'll hear more news stories, but we wanted to get to a deeper story. So we've invited a brand new friend, Curtis Chain. He's a theologian. He's the founder of Redeeming Babel. He is on faculty at Duke Divinity School, senior fellow at the Fuller Theological Seminary, and has actually put out a video trying to deal a bit with this fear. Curtis, I guess this is a Zoom 5. Hi, how you doing?
Hello.
Glad you could join us today.
I'm very and excited you're looking for, but especially it's biblical. Everyone is.
We
Don't take
were
vaccines.
we were a little bit concerned about your connection, and it was perfect until I introduced you, and then all of a sudden it it started getting a little weird. So I'll pretend like I just introduced you again. We did the Air 5, all of that. Welcome. We'll try again. And
True.
if not, I'll tell you what. If you stay on there, I'm going to give you I'm going to call you as we're live doing this on your cell phone. And if
Okay.
you can pick that up, we'll see if we can get a better audio from that.
Sounds good. Let me mute so you don't get feedback.
Oh, he's smart that way. That's good. There we go.
Hello.
There you go. Nothing like live radio, right? Are you getting a feedback?
I am. I'm going to leave the computer audio so I get rid of that as well. Okay, there we go. Can you hear me
Test.
now? Yep, you can hear. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Perfect. Okay, we're good.
Okay.
So, third time is a charm. He's so nice.
All right.
We introduced him more than twice. Curtis, thanks for joining us today.
I'm so glad. Third time's a charm here. And so I'm really glad to be here. Glad to get a chance to be part of your mission to spread the truth, both medical and biblical truth, about this really important decision that everyone is facing. Even people who are deciding not to take the vaccine are making a decision. So we want that decision to be as informed as possible by the
There you
best
go.
information, both biblically and medically.
Very well put. Really, that's where knowledge is power. And we see that running the gamut. We can talk about it with COVID, but it's really true in every area of our lives. And as we get to the God story, it's true with the God story too. We walk around with half-cocked ideas, things that are quasi-biblical, and then we walk around spouting them as though they're true. They really aren't. So even in the most important realm, which I would say is the God story, we still don't always know the whole story, and we operate kind of half-cocked. So maybe in the realm of faith, somebody has to be the grown-up in the room and say, hey, look at the whole story. So let's talk about this fear that every area of this COVID thing, from front to back, from differing ideologies, is seemingly operated and pushed by fear.
I think that's right. I think it's fear and distrust are the prevailing spirits of the age. And I think as Christians, we are called to hope and trust as our fundamental posture towards God, towards the world, and towards each other. And now it doesn't mean we're all perfect, or the government's perfect, or the science is perfect, or the medical system is perfect, but to have a fundamental stance of distrust and fear, I think is actually quite contrary to the way that Christians are called to live. And so, for instance, with the vaccine, we actually have a tremendous amount of reason to live with both hope and fear. I mean, hope and trust, because hope for certainly the vaccine is by far the best chance we have to get back to life as we wanted to get back to life together, to worship together, to regather in the church lobby together, to hug one another. The vaccine is our best shot at that, and it's a great hope we have. And the reasons for fearing the vaccine are really, I think, grossly exaggerated. Mm-hmm. We actually have enormous amount of reasons to trust in the safety and the efficacy of the vaccine.
Okay. Now, I tend to be a little more skeptical of the vaccine. We've had quite a few experts on that have said, it is not a one-size-fits-all. And that's true. There are people who should be concerned about taking the vaccine, people with autoimmune disorders, people who have overt sensitivities and allergies. And we have seen people who have had palsy, death, and the like. That's very true, and that needs to be part of the narrative as well. It isn't necessarily a one-size-fits-all. And I get that. We ignore herd immunity with this amazing system that God's given us. We don't talk about things that we should be doing, like cutting out sugar, taking vitamin D, C, getting out in the sunshine. These are things we need to boost our immune system, and we're not really getting all of that balance. All of the things that we talked about are true, though, and that's the funny thing, Curtis, is that what you're saying is, the vaccine can be a good alternative for people. It can be something for people, especially at risk, if you make the right decision for you. What I'm saying is true, too, that there are reasons for concern. Great. All of those things can be true at the same time. Isn't it funny that we live in an age where we think it has to be one or the other? You have to be on one side or the other. We don't realize two things can be true at the same time.
Yeah, although I would say that, look, because none of us actually know this, I mean, as much as I've studied the science on this, I would be lying to you if I said, oh, I totally understand the science of the vaccine and who should or who should not get the vaccine, especially because I'm not a doctor. I think the message I have for Christians to think about this is to actually trust the experts. And by that, I mean, start with the expert you trust the most, namely your doctor. If you are wondering whether or not the vaccine is a good fit or you're at risk, start with the person that you would go to with any other health condition, right? If you were in danger of maybe a cancer diagnosis, would you make that decision all by yourself, or would you just, say, oh, I'm just going to go with my gut feeling on that?
Good point.
You would go to the expert, right, who actually knows the best about medicine, about the data, and you would have to trust that doctor.
And research it. Get a second opinion. That's perfectly
and get a second,
fine.
Absolutely.
But
go
that's
get a second
good.
opinion from a second doctor.
Yeah.
But don't just go. You wouldn't. I mean, if you had a friend who had that diagnosis, you wouldn't want that person just getting their information from some random post they saw on Facebook about their treatment. That should not be any different with COVID. COVID is the third leading cause of death in the U.S. this last year, more than any other individual form of cancer, or even, any other of the major diseases. The third leading cause. It is a fatal and threatening disease. We should take it seriously, and we should treat it just like we would. We should approach it just like we would any other medical threat, and get the best information from doctors. And if we have religious concerns, if we think that there's some religious reason, that faith reason, then we should talk to those who kind of can help us guide through the ethical, the biblical, the religious concerns we might have.
So that's the issue that I really wanted to bring up as well. Now, it's fine that people have concerns, right? And it's great to research it. I am not one for just saying, okay, some expert in Washington, D.C. said I need to do this. This is my body. This is and if you're a biblical type person, it's a temple of the Holy Spirit. God's given me this. I have to be a good steward. Okay, I'll do some research. And we've talked a bit about that. But then there's the other side of the vaccine that people are concerned about, in many regards, tends to fall within the lines of evangelicals, especially that the whole tracking system and vaccine passports and the ability of technology to have information put into vaccines. Now, it's not there yet, but there is a patent that they can put stuff in the vaccine so they can scan you, and people are going, whoa, that's a mark of the beast territory there. That's wigging me out. And I totally get that. But there is a difference between selling your soul to Satan and getting a vaccine. We're not there yet, people. I get the concern, but we've got to find some balance there.
Well, Michelle, actually, we're not even anywhere close into that territory. There is no tracking capacity or device.
Oh, but there is.
Remotely concerned with
there
the vaccine.
Is. There actually
Michelle,
is. There is
Michelle,
technology
there really
that is available. It is being tested. It is not in vaccines. It's nowhere close to being put in vaccines yet. And that I would concur with you. But there is technology there, and that's what people are looking at for what could be taking place in the future.
I think what you're referring to is the ability to track the supply chain of the vaccines, which is true with anything we have in the world.
No, actually, I'm talking about a patent that they do have and that is being tested in being able to have tracking information with very limited information that is able to be injected into and could be, and this is a very big could be, put into vaccines. It is being talked about. It is something that could take place, but it is not happening now. And so the vaccine that we're getting at the doctor, it doesn't have tracking device. You're not selling your soul to Satan, but when we're fed information on social media and we're not looking into it and researching it ourselves or finding trusted sources, as you mentioned, it is something that burns out of control. And suddenly we think that getting the vaccine is akin to, ushering in the Antichrist or something. And I know it sounds crazy, but people are going down that road.
Oh, no. I think we have to take people's concerns seriously. So take, for example, the fear that this is somehow the mark of the beast. We actually have created a whole video just on that question alone. So I should say, in an attempt to try to help educate people, we've created a website called christiansinthevaccine.com. There's a bunch of videos on there. Each of them is trying to help people think through a specific question. So, for example, there's a video there on, is the vaccine the mark of the beast? There's another one, is the vaccine a form of government control? Can you be pro-life and pro-vaccine is another video. There's another video on, fundamentally on, is the vaccine safe? We've got a video there with an interview with Francis Collins, who's the director of the NIH, who oversaw the development of the vaccines, who is a devout Christian and the nation's top leading scientists, to answer some of these questions about safety concerns and tracking and so forth. So I encourage people to go check it out. I mean, and to say that absolutely, if you have questions, try to get the best information. And on our side is at least one really great source with experts like Dr. Collins, who is, you can't get any higher of a medical expert to look at that question. So absolutely, and we have to listen. We have to start with where people are at, and we have to strike this balance between giving in to any fear that pops up on our social media feed and simply thinking that is true, and at the same time just writing off people's real questions and fears. So that's what we're trying to do on this side, is start with people's real questions and actually try to address them.
I like that because I do understand Danish researchers have documented for years TB, polio, smallpox, malaria. They all have when you get vaccinated, there are sometimes some unforeseen great side effects. And that's why we've seen so much development in the way of drugs that could maybe help with COVID, because there's unforeseen benefits to getting vaccines. There are some good things. They can help you be immune to things you didn't even realize. Now, conversely, there are also unforeseen issues, sometimes mortality from unrelated diseases. So, this is where research is good. It is, we never give into a one size fits all. But you were talking about experts that say, hey, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. I just wanted to play just 2 minutes, if you'll indulge me, from Dr. Fuzz Rana. And he's a molecular biologist. He is also one of the contributors to Reasons to Believe. And he talked about the vaccine not only being something that we think of as brand new. He said, no, indeed, it's been about 30 years in the making. They've been researching this. And he said, also think about this if you're faith-based and you're thinking, oh, no, it's a sign of the beast, that in part, it's almost miraculous how this vaccine, the mRNA, came to be in a time just when we need it. Do you mind if I play that?
Please, go ahead.
All right, we'll take a listen.
We were talking about the fact that these messenger RNA vaccines are brand new vaccines. And this is true because with the COVID-19 vaccines developed both by Pfizer, BioNTech, as well as Moderna, this is the first time that these vaccines will be used on a large scale in human populations. And so many people are afraid, and are concerned because they're new. Are they really effective? Are they really safe? And couple that with the fact that these vaccines were developed in record time. Prior to this, I think the fastest a vaccine has ever been developed is 4 years. And here we've gone from basically developing a vaccine and having it ready to be deployed in less than a year, in about 6 to 9 months. And so this causes a lot of fear in people, but I think it's really important to remember that these vaccines have been developed over the span of 30 years. The process of developing these mRNA vaccines has literally taken 30 years. To actually execute these vaccines has been very, very difficult. And what was happening is that at the very point in time that the COVID-19 pandemic hit, that we had developed RNA vaccines to the point that we already were in small-scale clinical trials with these vaccines for things like Ebola and Zika. And so we worked out by that point in time how to actually do these vaccines.
Yeah, I think when you think about that, this is a tool that's available to you. Vaccines can be a wonderful tool. That doesn't mean that they are above scrutiny. It doesn't mean that we give into it and just say, oh, yay, because adjuvants that are often put in vaccines, not in the mRNA, by the way, it's a very different kind of vaccine, but the adjuvants that are put in can sometimes cause secondary problems. There's a whole government entity that tracks that kind of a thing that we've talked about. But and as even Dr. Rana said, there are certain segments of the population that probably shouldn't get this vaccine. And that's where, as you said, you look into it, you ask those who are in authority that you believe in, and all of that. But the more important thing that I was so excited to have you on to talk about is to help us with this spirit of fear. Now, the Bible says God didn't give us a spirit of fear, but of love, power, and sound mind. I'm telling you what, you look on social media, there is not a whole lot of sound mind going on there, Curtis.
No, amen to that. And I think the one of the key things that I want to call Christians to is this notion that actually that it's thoroughly biblical, is that God gave us experts, God gave us institutions to help us navigate life, including life's health decisions. We have so much of the fear and distrust is the distrust of experts and the distrust of institutions. And I actually think that is not fundamentally a biblical perspective. Think about how health was structured in the Old Testament. It was through the priests. It was not every person made a decision completely for themselves. It was the priest that certified.
Don't you think there's balance, though? Because we don't just give ourselves, I mean, we're a government of, by, and for we the people. And, we've seen in the past where people just complicitly go with what the government says, and then you end up with absolute chaos, deaths, discrimination, wars. So, there really has to be a balance, because in some cases in our government, we have people who are appointed who become these gurus, and they don't have accountability, and they don't have other scientists that are saying, wait a minute, let's look at this. And one narrative and one narrative only is pushed. So shouldn't there be some balance there as well?
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that you do is you actually look at the track record of these institutions, and you see, have they acted, generally speaking, on our behalf and for our good? And in this case, the institutions that we're talking about they're not perfect. All the research institutions or the CDC or the NIH, they're human. Again, these are human institutions. So they're, of course, going to be flawed. So we can't seize upon one flaw and make a blanket judgment, oh, we can't ever trust that institution. You wouldn't do that with your spouse or your friend or some individual that if you saw one flaw. It kind of depends on
how big the flaw is, I think.
Sure. And you have to, and do they admit when they've made a flaw? And do they repent of it? So you're looking for, in the same way that you make these kinds of evaluations of individuals, you do the same with institutions, and you see what's their track record. Have they acted on my behalf? When they are wrong, do they admit it? And in general, I would say that the institutions that are overseeing the vaccine have proven to be, generally speaking, reliable. In fact, all of us rely on them all the time. I mean, if you have your child who's gotten strep throat, for instance, right, and you go to your doctor and you get a antibiotic or some prescription, you don't know for yourself for sure whether or not what is in that medicine or what effect it was or what the studies were. You're essentially trusting your doctor, and you're trusting your doctor's knowledge of all the research institutions that stand behind it, the FDA that approved
I'm a little bit different on that. And that's why I was so excited to have you on, because we come from a different mindset. I don't trust. I do my own research and take authority over my own body in conjunction with my doctor. I don't go in and just say, okay, you know it, I'll do it to me, because antibiotics is a perfect example. We've so overused antibiotics that by 2050, even the CDC and other people in authority that you've cited are saying antibiotics may have outlived their usefulness, that we may not have effective antibiotics anymore because we give them for everything from earaches to, just routinely. And so
but again, Michelle, how did you learn that information? You learned that because some institution that you ended up actually trusting to do the research to realize that there's overuse of antibiotics. So you ended up relying on some expert. It was a different set of experts, perhaps, than what was the prevailing wisdom. But that was that. But we all have to. We ultimately always have to trust someone and some institution to guide us through life.
And question authority. It is okay to question authority. There is one authority, to me, there is one thing that is irrefutable, and that's the person and the work of Jesus Christ. Everything else we can kind of question, but as we wind up our conversation today, Curtis, what we cannot do is operate in fear. So you and I may come from maybe a different way of looking at it, and we're debating it. in a healthy, okay, let's look at this kind of a way. But one thing that is irrefutable is that there is a God, and you can refute it if you want. That's okay. As you're listening, as you're watching, you can email me, Michelle at MyMichelleLive.com. But for me, the person, and the work of Jesus Christ, irrefutable. Everything else, I'm open for debate, and I'm even open for debate on that. But you're not going to change my mind. But what we cannot do is, as people of faith, saying that we have faith, operate in a spirit of fear. Do your homework. Be willing to listen to another point of view, because you may learn something that actually could save your life. I'll give you the final word.
No, I think those are great words, Michelle, and I think we're in agreement absolutely that the call of Jesus here is to actually not give into that spirit of fear, and that it should put us in open to actually ask questions and to seek information from those we trust. And that would be my final word to your listeners: is who would you trust if you were in a threat or in danger of getting cancer or a heart disease or a kidney disease? That same person is going to be the best person who's going to guide you on COVID and the vaccine. So I would start there and ask them, and not actually retreat into fear and not do anything, but rather step out and actually engage actively on this decision. And it is a decision. Everybody has to make a decision on the vaccine. The decision not to get a vaccine is a decision. And so you should approach it as something that you want to seek the best help you can to guide you on that decision.
Well put. That is a decision. So not doing it is a decision as well. That should be as informed as your decision to get it. So well put. And thank you so much. I know I'm kind of feisty and you put up with me. I really like that. I like that about you.
Super happy